Let us welcome to the program the President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. Jacob Zuma. Pleasure having you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Good. Now, I suppose the only way to begin this interview is to talk about the students of our country. And these last few weeks have seen protests that have unsurpassed anything we have seen since, let's go back all those years in 1976. What's your reaction to all of this?
Well, the reaction really is that the issue of the cost of education in our country is the issue, particularly because you have students from poor families. With time, I think this is becoming more of a challenge because the fees have been rising. And I've said this in the past publicly, that our education is really prohibitively expensive to poor, because if it keeps on going up and they can't even manage what they were doing from the beginning, that becomes a problem. The feeling of the students was that if it goes up next year, it means you are going to exclude a lot of students who are keen to study, but who just not afford. And I think that rallied the students to be together to say, we can't. It has reached a point where we cannot manage. And therefore, we must call the attention of the institutions of higher learning. But as you realized, they were not budging. Because while the students were making challenges and demands, there was no voice coming from them, either explaining or whatever. So it reached a point where they said, well, let us take the matter to government. And I think once the matter was taken to government, and it was clear that it is not just like your usual protest of students. This has become national, because the issue became common to every other university. So there was an issue of solidarity, but also an issue of really challenging this to say, we can't be deprived education. So it began to gain sympathy. I must say, I also said this in public, that I sympathize with the students because I know what happens. I run two legal institutions which educate poor students. It is a trust that educates poor students. Almost every year I experience this, where kids cry their parents because they can't even register, let alone the fees. Registration itself is very high. So I know it. Yeah. So I was very sympathetic to their cause because I know what it means. Other kids who can't reach me or reach somebody else, they're crowded out. So that was the issue that one was thinking about, to say, what then do we do? And of course, as you would know, I had met the leaders of the higher institutions about 3 weeks ago. We discussed a number of issues, as well as this establishment of a task team to look at a number of challenges. But there was no idea that the fees were being raised. So when it came as kind of a surprise because we had just met. So once it reached a particular stage, it was clear that as government we needed to respond, particularly at a level of the president, to say, let us find a solution to this. Because it was clear, gaining momentum throughout, as you must have realized. I think it was one of the first demonstrations that was really multiracial. Other students were there not because they are poor, but because they were making the point that you cannot continue like this to exclude other students. Others were saying this is a very clever way of excluding other students. Yeah. So it became a big issue. So we then thought it was important to bring all sides together to sit in one meeting and discuss the solution, because the country could not take the kind of demonstration going on for a long time. So that's why I called for the meeting, where the students will be represented by their leaders, and the leadership of the institutions of higher learning will also come. And that's why I then had asked the meeting to take place, to respond to what was really becoming a big issue in the country.
Yeah. Why this long, though? Because, I mean, from what I'm hearing from you, this is something that you have been seeing, that you sympathize with the students, that the fees are far too high, and yet through the years, subsidies towards universities have been dropping. I mean, surely this is something that you have seen as well as your minister has seen in charge of the portfolio?
Yes. I asked the question myself. What is it? Because I wanted to confirm whether my thinking was right. What is it that makes the support, the subsidy go down? And therefore, on the other hand, the fees going up? The simple answer is that we have prioritized education in the country, and therefore have mobilized the country to really focus on education. And therefore, the numbers of students has been growing very rapidly. And apparently, that therefore was, in a sense, pulling down the support to the universities, because it meant that there were more numbers. There wasn't any finances that were balancing that. And that's why it looked like it is coming down, because it could not take on new students that are coming. So that is an explanation that has been made by the department, that this is what has caused the imbalance. And therefore, it is a challenge that, unfortunately, we did not then look at before this kind of a problem. But once the problem started, now we began to see what are the causes to all of this. And as a result of that, the discussion, therefore, tended to say, let us find a lasting solution. But we had to find an immediate solution that will help to stop the protest, and then begin to look at other issues. For an example, when the students were there, they were able to present their case, not only on the zero rise or on the fees in general, but also on free education, as well as accommodation of students in many institutions where accommodation is a big problem. But also, they are very keen to say, why? Because they have knowledge about how the funds flow, etc. They also ask the question, why has the subsidy shrunk? So these are matters that have been taken on board to say that the task team that we had then established will have to look at, because we must find a solution not only to the short-term one, but to the medium to long-term.
Yeah. I want to get onto the issue of free education, because this is now what students are shouting out for. The reality is, let's go back all the way to 1994. One of the big promises from the ANC was free education for all.
Yeah.
We're sitting in 2015. That's not happening. It's almost like students are demanding what perhaps their parents had been promised and now they want. Do you think that the ANC overpromised and is under-delivering?
Not at all. Not at all. You will remember that the question of free education is in the Freedom Charter, long before the ANC was in government. This is one of the fundamental policies of the ANC. The question has been the implementation of it. Now, you have got to have resources to implement that policy, and you must look at it in a particular way. For an example, the ANC government has been moving on this matter. You will recall that many schools today, not at the level of higher institutions, many schools that are poor, from poor areas, are no longer paying fees. So it has been implemented at a particular level. That has relieved the burden of poor and orphans and everybody. Now, that is one thing that we have done already, concretely, as a way of implementing it. You will also recall that there was a investigation of this point that was investigated, that produced a report, which people are saying has not been made public, to say, how do we arrive at this point? So We have not set back. The issue really is the resources, I think, to some degree. Now, what to me is more important is that this policy, that is a very fundamental policy to empower citizens, which we have been trying to move, in other words, trying to find resources at one point or the other, because you must know resources of government go to a number of things. For an example, 16 million people government has to cater for, who otherwise would have nothing to eat. Then the poor students who are not paying, we have been also increasing the NSFAS up to 9.6 billion to try to deal with education, moving towards that area of free education. But it has been not easy because we have got to find resources. You can't say, I don't care about other things, I'll only do this thing, because we have got to split the budget in different ways. Now, the fact that the matter has been raised, and what I am happy about, is that this policy, as a result of the protests of the students, is now being supported by everyone in the country. It's for the first time, because people in the past were just saying, this is ANC policy only, we'll see how it goes with it. Now everybody supports it. I think it's just the good moment that we establish. I'm now thinking of further reconstructing or composing what I have asked to be a task team. I'm wanting to elevate it into a commission so that all these issues will be part of the issues that will be taken in the process. That process must tell us how far can we go to implement the free education? What would be the time frames? What would be the cost? Because now it's no longer the question of accepting the policy. It's a question of implementing the policy when everybody agrees. Nobody's going to say, where are you taking the resources to? Because everybody feels this is what needs to be done. And that's why, in my view, the issues are now on the table for consideration. These issues, accommodation and others, will be part of what will be dealt with, including fundamentally the future of the implementation of free education, which is agreed. It's a question of how do we do it? What are the time frames? How much it will cost? How we're going to reach that particular point?
Yeah. So it is going to be a reality in South Africa.
It has to. It has to be a reality in South Africa. Because if you take into account our history, there's a huge majority that was excluded from proper and quality education, and is a big number. Now, we are trying to absorb that number into the mainstream, but you can't remain forever not doing it. We've got to address that issue with the understanding that we are at a developmental state. Once we reach a particular state, we could perhaps readjust it in a particular way. This time around, if you don't address it, you are actually excluding a lot of citizens from education who have nothing to pay for education.
Yeah, indeed. And we look at about turns, and the reality was we saw our higher education minister saying it's going to be capped at 6%. You came in, you gave in to the demands of the students, and it is going to be zero. Having said that, now there's going to be a 3 billion rand shortfall next year. Where is this money going to come from?
Well, that is what, firstly, that committee is going to look at. That is what also the government must look at, because we have got to find a way to handle this matter. You can't preempt the answer. The answer must come from the work that is going to be done, because this is an important investment of the country to educate its citizens. We can today have difficulties to do it, but in future we will benefit from this decision that we have taken to invest. So it's a matter that the experts that we are going to put into this process should produce the answers. How and when are we going to get this? Are there any things within government that we should look at and find other kind of resources somewhere? to shift or whatever, that we are leaving it to the experts.
All right. Let's go back to what happened at the union buildings. And a lot of the students came out. They came to see you. They were hoping you would come outside and address them, but instead they heard it via a television broadcast that you had given. This upset the students a lot. They all went there in their numbers to come and see you and hear you speak to them. Why didn't you go out?
Well, firstly, I called a meeting. I did not call a protest. I called a meeting to discuss this matter. And it is absolutely correct for the students to come closer to where the discussions were taking place. Absolutely correct. Also, to anticipate that perhaps a president at one time is going to come to say what has happened, what is the outcome of the meeting. And indeed, the students, for an example, this had become a national issue. So what was important, once you finish the discussions, I had to address the nation. And that is important, not to address the nation via addressing students, properly to discuss or to make an announcement to the nation. The matter had become national. I could have finished there and then go to address the student to say, this is what I've just addressed. It could have worked that way. But what prevented that is that when the students were there, whilst we were meeting, they started violence there. They started stoning the police, breaking the fence continuously. The leaders of the students who were with us, they themselves began to be under pressure. Now, as we concluded the meeting, it therefore became important that the leader of the students go to address the students whilst I would be addressing the nation. But as you realize, violence continued. It did not create a conducive environment for an address. In fact, some ministers who tried to address them, to inform them that the president might be coming, they were stoned themselves. So from the point of view of the importance of the message, to me, what was important was to address the nation, that this is what we have come up with. These are the kind of resolutions we have taken. And by that time, their leaders were addressing them to give the same report.
Yeah. You don't think that the address that you were giving the students was also going to be somewhat of a nationwide address? It was going to be on television. In fact, probably a broader public. And having said that, a lot of people felt that this was a missed opportunity to win over the youth onto your side.
Well, I'm sure people could interpret it in many ways. I'm not sure whether the people really followed what was happening. You know, the students banned two police cars. They were stoning the cars with bricks and everything. Now, where will the nation listen to that, all of that? They're not prepared to listen to anything. Now, I could have missed an opportunity to address the nation by addressing the students. I don't think the value of that is the same. My task was to inform the nation on this matter that was making the whole nation concerned. What is it that we have done? Not in the midst of bricks and everything and everything. Their leaders were enough from that point of view that they were going to address them to tell them the outcome. Now, if the students, for an example, I've gone into situations where at the end of anything, you go and appear in the big crowd and say what has happened. But it should be a crowd that is conducive for that kind of situation. I think among the students, there were those who were just bent into listening to nothing. That is why, at the end, some of them were not even worried about such an important victory that scored, because to them, this demonstration was going somewhere else, and it gave an impression that some people, opportunistic people, were actually beginning to abuse the protest of the students, the manner in which it was. And I think you must have seen that the mixed reception of the decision, for an example, where other students were not seeing any importance of this thing, which was a core point of their protest. Once they have now received this, it was a victory. But some were saying, no, we are continuing. Why? But that tells you that the situation was not conducive to convey with dignity to the nation what we have come to do. So it was important that we address the nation and they get addressed by their leaders.
Let's wrap up the fees must fall conversation for now, because I think we've addressed quite a few issues, and the reality is that free education is on the cards. It's something you want to see, but something the students want to see, is it in writing? Is that they want a time frame. And I know you said we're going to set up commissions. We are going to get it to them. But 2016 is around the corner, and so is 2017. When are we going to give them something tangible?
Well, I can't guarantee that. That is going to come out of the commission that is going to be working on this. I can't preempt them. The task of, or the amount, the size of the task is going to determine that. We can't rush it because it has a lot of involvement. Because if we say, yes, we want free education, we all say so. But how? How are we going to finance it? What kind of way? Is it going to just come suddenly, or is going to sort of move in a kind of way where you gradually move on a road map to ensure? Because what is important is that we are now agreed to need it. The issue is how to work towards reaching it or achieving it. Now, we are going to come up with the specific things that are going to make us all to realize that we'll achieve it. Where is the money? We must come up with a solution to say, this is how the money is going to come. There are many proposals. The students themselves were making proposals there about how the taxing could be done in order to find the money. So all of those are in the basket. So I can't say this will be the time to take. But the fact of the matter is that we are now addressing that matter. And we know the matter is urgent. And therefore, those who will be given the task to undertake it, they will know they don't have all the time in the world. So they will begin to work on the time frames.
Our conversation with the President continues after this break. Right, welcome back. If you've just tuned in, we're having a frank conversation with President Jacob Zuma about many issues affecting our country now and I suppose in the future as well. Thanks again for your time, Mr. President. It's always a pleasure having you here with us. Let's move away from students, and I suppose we can't ever really move away from them because it's the center of everything. They are our future, they are our present. So let's now look at the unemployment figures that have come out recently. Unemployment, it's growing wherever you look. The latest stats say that joblessness has spiked in 6 provinces. Nationally, we are sitting on 0.5% up in total unemployment. This is at about 25.5%. This has to worry you.
It is. It is worrying me. It is worrying the government. It is worrying the ruling party. It's a problem that we have been dealing with almost from the beginning. Unfortunately, the economic meltdown globally made an impact that put us into difficulties on this one, because it meant that the economy was not growing as we had planned. So it meant that therefore the issue of people losing jobs is going to be more. The question of young people qualifying, coming into the labor force are not going to get the jobs easily. So it is a very worrying issue. And each time we look at those figures, are the figures that worry a great deal. We've tried our level best under the circumstances to create the kind of projects in the economic activities that employ people, like the infrastructure and a number of other things. We have, for an example, come up with the 9-point plan to develop economy in an attempt to implement the National Development Plan. These are things we do in an attempt to address that issue. But as long as the economy is growing very slow, that becomes the problem is a global problem. It's not just a South African problem. How to handle that? For an example, in the World Economic Forum that was held here, one of the issues I was raising, and I've raised it within our government, thinking about it, raising it with the private sector, shouldn't we identify few sectors that perhaps could be ring-fenced to be labor-intensive and less a kind of technological development taking over, so that you guarantee the employment? Is an issue that we are looking at. It's not an easy one, because it means some industries should be then put to address this issue, whatever. Particularly because there is the younger generation that is coming in, who will end up not getting employment. Yeah. So what is it that we can do? It's an issue that we talk about all the time.
Yeah, and it's an important issue, because it's an issue that, again, relating back to what we're seeing from the students, is they want the education. They want to go out there and get jobs, but the jobs aren't available. And industries are bleeding jobs all of the time. We're living in a different world to how things are. I mean, this is a technological world. This is a world where news spreads so fast and messages get out so fast, which in itself is, it's good, but it's dangerous. We've seen it happen in our other African countries on the continent. Yes. We talk about Arab Springs, where people are not happy because they don't have anything. What are we doing as a matter of urgency to enrich the people of South Africa?
Well, as I say, you can't do magic. You can't do magic. It's a question of how far do we go with this issue. In 2008, when the economic meltdown globally came, we all met, government, private sector, labor, organized labor, and the communities. We all met to say, how do we meet this? We agreed then that we needed to establish a fund which all of us will contribute, so that instead of the workers who will be losing jobs, going out of the industry, they will be taken to develop their skills. And that money was for that one. And that, in a sense, helped us not to have the greater number. Now, that indicates we need to discuss the issue collectively, to say, given the fact that this continues as the numbers come all the time, what else can we do? That's why I was saying there are ideas about, couldn't we perhaps identify industries that would be labor intensive to ensure that we therefore do the unusual in order to address the issue, because it is a serious issue, but it needs all of us. You bear in mind that the problem is that government is not a job creator. Government creates conducive environment for the private sector. So we need to coordinate this, all of us. Also with the workers, we need to look at the kind of things that will make other people get jobs easy, rather than making it or with it becoming difficult to have people, for an example, who come out of universities getting jobs, creating a favorable environment there that you can have this. So that is a challenge that faces all of us. It's not just the problem of government, because no one can say we have not created conducive environment for investment. But the issue is that the economic meltdown globally has had this impact. Now, given the fact that we are a developing country, given the fact that we've got a particular history that, in a sense, impact as a history in how our labor is. You know that if you count unemployed workers, you find that a good percentage is unemployable, or they don't have the skills, given our history. These are the matters that we need to take into account. That is why I'm saying, if perhaps we could move towards saying these particular industries, we reinforce them, that it takes more labor, should be labor intensive in order to meet or mitigate the situation of unemployment.
Yeah. I know that you say that government is not a job creator. It makes conditions conducive for business to work. But corruption is a huge issue that's stopping business from working, that's stopping external investors. What do you have to say about this?
Well, we are fighting that. I think our government was the first in this country to initiate a struggle to get rid of corruption. Corruption is a sickness in the world. we establish institutions to address that issue, and we've arrested people. We've done everything who are doing corruption, and we'll continue to do so because it is a big problem. It's not just a problem, although, and if you listen to the narrative, corruption is always put as if it's a government problem. Corruption is in the private sector everywhere. We fight it. We have policies to deal with it. But it is a problem. And you'll find it everywhere in the world. It might differ if, for example, in other places, the media does not necessarily expose it. So it might look like there is nothing of that nature. It's something that needs all of us to come together and fight it. We believe we are in the forefront in fighting corruption because it comes from one point or the other. We've arrested people in the civil servants. We've dismissed people. We've made people to pay back. So it is a struggle that we are moving. We've got special institutions that do special investigation. We can't wish it away. We have got it to work to get rid of it. And I think we do have the instruments to do so. But it is a huge challenge.
It is a huge challenge, and it's something that affects every part of our society, which in turn leads to crime. And crime in South Africa is, one would say, out of control. Would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. In South Africa, out of control, let me just explain as I understand it. In many countries, crime is very high, higher at times than in South Africa. Now, the difference in South Africa, and I think this is what everybody should appreciate, crime has become too violent in South Africa. People kill because they want to rob you, without even knowing whether you have anything to rob out of you. The guns are too much. People are shooting. People do extra things. For an example, one of the very terrible crimes is the rape of young kids or old women, which you don't hear from other places. So you could isolate some of the areas which to us are terrible, but it is too violent. That is, I think, what makes it to be a little bit above others. It's the violent part that South Africa exercises. They become very violent criminals. They kill, they come in, they can take things and wait for you to come instead of taking and disappearing, and they're armed. They shoot, they do everything. That's a problem. That's a problem. They take a car of somebody, they shoot somebody. That's a problem we're faced with. South Africans have to discuss, should we have these guns all over the country? Is that conducive to the kind of life, safe life that we want, that everybody else is armed? Should we agree to that? Do we have a solution to deal with that? Because it is an important point for a nation to debate and say, what do we do? Do we want everybody to hold, say, a gun because they are afraid of something? And therefore, to increase the chance of guns out there that are taken by criminals? Or should we disarm the society? Only the police, soldiers, and perhaps security that carry guns, so that there's less of people who are carrying guns. These days, people just quarrel, sitting, and it takes out a gun. And if it did not have a gun, they would not even reach the area, the stage of fighting. Gun creates a particular feeling. Now, I'm saying, as a country, we need to discuss that.
Yeah.
What do we say about guns that are in the hands of everybody, including criminals? But also, you are aware that our population is also having a lot of people coming from other countries to South Africa. We're one of those countries. And some of these people have skills, some of them were soldiers, etc. And that's why the crime has become violent in many ways. What do we say as a country? It should be a problem of all of us to discuss and agree, what do we do? Do we want only those who are authorized to carry the guns, or do we want everybody else? I'm saying the danger is that the guns at times are with people who are not responsible to handle the guns.
Yeah.
And the results is that many people die.
What would you like as president? Would you like to see gun control tightened extensively here in the country?
I would, absolutely would.
Why are we not doing it then?
That's the point I'm saying. Let the society discuss the matter. Because everybody, or not everybody, many people want to own the guns. But the guns slip out of their hands, are used. That's why I'm saying we need the country to discuss the matter and empower the government, for an example, to tighten. Because if you tighten, people are going to say you are, in a sense, interfering with the right of owning a gun because we've got rights. But if the country says, let us do this, after seeing, and because I think there are statistics that indicate that guns kill more people than any other thing. So we need a country or organizations to discuss and take a decision on this matter so that people should not say government is imposing a thing that I have my gun because I want to protect myself. Because if all of us are not having guns, they're only with the security people who ought to have them, I'm telling you the death through the guns will be eliminated.
Let's move on to our police force then. And perhaps a reason that a lot of South Africans do have guns and feel that they need to protect themselves is that they don't feel that they are protected enough by the police. Now, let's call into account what's happening with the leadership of the police. We've got the National Police Commissioner who is not there anymore. We know, obviously, we're not going to get into details on that. But a lot of people saying, why can we not have somebody who has experience in policing to head up a police force and perhaps bring law and order back into South Africa?
I think the leadership of the police is experience. The collective leadership, it is. We can't say the generals that are there are not experienced. They are experienced. And they are given those kind of task operations to undertake. The issue of either one political commissioner is a different matter. Because indeed, there is leadership. In provinces, for an example, there are provincial commissioners. I think almost all of them are an experienced police. As well as at headquarters, there is a huge collective of trained police. I don't think we could judge that point by one person. You need, and those are given tasks, operational tasks, to undertake. I think you should take South Africa as South Africa. That South Africa has a particular character, like the character of violence, for an example, which you don't find in other countries. The very fact that ordinary citizens kill the police is not a common thing globally. Only here, wherein the police die in numbers. It tells you the problem. It doesn't mean that the police who's carrying a gun, who's a police person, is not experienced. These are inexperienced police. But the criminals carry guns and kill police. So you are dealing with a very special kind of circumstances that need, therefore, even the police force to really look into the manner in which they do the policing. One of the problems that face the police, for an example, if people are violent, the police are in difficulties what to do. Because if they start to be police and to be harder, they are criticized. And when they are soft, not doing anything, trying to nurse the situation, they are killed. And they say, but what do we do? What is it that we should do that will really make everybody feel happy? So we need to look at, in other words, we need to give the police their space to do policing. And we need, that's why I'm saying the issue, therefore, of citizens that are walking there dangerous with guns and other things. We need to address that so that we give the space for the police to do their work. Of course, you know that there has been, for an example, the report from the Falam Commission, which has commented on the question of the training of the police. And the police department is working on that to ensure that a particular type of action by the citizens, police should have that kind of training ready for that. We are working on it. And therefore, those matters are going to be addressed. But I must say, the manner in which we react as the public at times is very unfortunate to the police. For an example, if you take what happened in the lawns of UN building, 2 police cars were burned. Nobody's talking about them. And they were not banned by the police. They were banned by among those who were abusing the protests. There's very little said about it. What is more said, how the police were harder on them. But they banned 2 government cars. Yeah. I'm just saying, it's a matter, and you could see the manner in which they were really throwing the stones at the police. And I think the police were very patient. And they're doing very well. But the more they are, in a sense, softer, the more the citizens actually move very strong against the police. So it's a matter that, again, needs sober minds to look at, to say, how can we handle this matter in a manner that you don't disadvantage the citizens or the police? And some of these measures I'm talking about need to be taken into account.
Yeah. Perhaps it's also an idea of examples that are set. And you talk about the police cars, which nobody can condone. That's absolutely wrong, and it should never be done. But again, we switch on Parliament. We switch on a parliamentary channel, and we see violence in Parliament. We see some members of Parliament being forcefully removed out of their chambers, which again sets a bad example. We see scenes that we've never ever seen in our country before happening. Don't you think this also affects the conscience of South Africans?
But you should start from the members who are taken out. Never in the past in Parliament you had members who did not respect the Speaker. When the Speaker says, sit down, you sit down. When the Speaker says, you out, move out because you are misbehaving, you go out. You don't say, I'm not going out. You say, apologize, withdraw, I'm not withdrawing it. That's a behavior that then invites the taking out. I think we should start there. Because if we criticize those who take them out as if they just come to them and take them out, it's not fair to the facts that those who are being taken out, they are making Parliament impossible to run. It's a new thing. That tells you the psychology that you have of politicians, and unfortunately, those politicians did say when they were campaigning, we're going to change Parliament. We're going to, and they came in Parliament with particular worrying things they were worrying, etc., and they are causing problem in Parliament. Instead of the country condemning them, who then induce the speakers to say, let us take them out of the House so that the business of Parliament should go. They actually make the business of Parliament not go. That's what should be condemned in the first instance. And then you can condemn the manner in which they are taken out. But they are taken out because they want these institutions not to work. What did you do with them? You can come there and sit, just listen to hard words going across. The presiding officers have a responsibility to ensure that the House functions properly. Now, it is the politicians who sit there and pointed finger at the Speaker. They are not sitting down. They speak before the Speaker gives them the permission to speak. It's chaos. Now, what must the Speaker do? He has a program. He has a program to run. These people, for an example, I went last in Parliament. I think it took 30 minutes before I could deal with questions. Because they were just making it impossible. And not only once, they've done it many times. At one point, the Parliament had to stop. And I'd come there to address issues. And afterwards, they say, no, I don't come to Parliament. I think we should say, because if we miss the point that the beginning of the problem is the behavior of some of the members of parliament that lead to people to come, or speakers taking a decision to take them out. That's where you should look at. The fact that they're being taken out, what you should do, I'm not going out. I'm not going to withdraw. You are actually undermining the rules of parliament, which are democratic rules agreed by all parties. What must be done? The rule is, if they become impossible, they must go out. The speakers have that authority. If they refuse, they must be taken out by those who are qualified to do so.
Yeah.
So once people look at that, I think those who speak, the media and others, should actually not fail to look at the cause of the reason why people are taken out.
Mr. President, we've come to the end of this interview, but I'm going to leave it to you to give South Africans a message at this time. It's a tough time in South Africa. It's always a tough time in South Africa, no matter what it's like. And I think what makes it even more tough is that we're not going to win the Rugby World Cup. So,
absolutely.
But let's not even worry about that. But what is your message to South Africans at a time like this? You're our leader. We need you to lead us.
Now, I am convinced that when we solved the issue of apartheid, the political solution of the country, there's one thing we did not pay attention to. That apartheid was a violent system. It then induced violence from those who were being victimized. And the violent culture in the country remained. So when we solved the problem, we did not realize that we needed to pay attention in the psychological manner of our people, that we needed to take out that culture. So that culture remained. That is why, whether it is the workers protesting, they burn tires, they destroy windows, they do whatever, destroy property, whether it is the communities protesting for delivery, they burned even the things that they wanted to be delivered. Whether it is breaking the windows, burning offices, and at times even burning libraries. But they want these libraries. Just the culture comes out, whether the students are protesting. So it's a culture that we need to deal with. All leaders, political, religious, traditional, and professionals, we need to address that culture. It's the wrong culture that then puts us in a particular level in society. It's important that we recognize this fact. Let us remove violence from South Africa. It's a task of all of us. Let us not condone it. Let us make those who take that action, that a particular action is taken against them, so that we can have a normal kind of society. It is important that we should also recognize that ever since 1994, there is progress that has been made in a number of things. Let us recognize that and then identify where we have not succeeded and say collectively, how do we move forward? Rather than the negativity that comes out all the time, which does not help, because many people who are articulate, who are supposed to be talking what we call a societal education, they don't do it. There is more negativity, criticisms, and all the times. That, in a sense, becomes a societal education you make to the ordinary people. They think that's how we should deal with the matter. Let us be sober. Let us deal with matters in a dignified manner as South Africans.
Mr. President, thank you again. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much indeed.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.